Hello, and welcome to this month's independent review on the Creepercast. This is the real man, Patrick, and with me is Captain Creeper himself, Michael.
What up?
Today we are reviewing the movie The Bay, the 2012 horror sci-fi thriller from the producers of Paranormal Activity and Insidious.
Really, Insidious as well. I didn't realize that.
Yes, I knew that Insidious was made by the Paranormal Activity people, so it stands to reason. There is more than one version of the Bay, or more than one movie with that name. So when you're checking this out, if we recommend you to, it is the 2012 version. Basically, the plot is chaos breaks out in a small Maryland town after an ecological disaster occurs. Michael, let's start with you. Talk about it.
Okay, well, to be totally honest, when I had never heard of this film, but as you know, I used to work for Blockbuster, and I remember when I pulled this up to do a little research, the cover, I remember seeing that. And I never did grab it off the shelf, and I never had anybody in the store that actually saw it or recommended it, so this was a fresh movie for me. But I started it, and I was immediately put on my guard because, as you stated, well, did you say? I don't know if you stated it. I kind of zoned out there for a second. It's a found footage movie. And as you listeners all know, I hate found footage movies. This movie started, and I went, oh, for fuck's sake, really? How many found footage movies do we have to watch?
All of them, sir. All of them. To give a little bit more on... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I was prepared to really, really hate this movie just because I don't like the found footage style, because most of it, is either low budget, or they try and make it look low budget because it's on, supposed to be done on cell phones and handheld recorders and what have you, and it's all shaky cam and whatever. But to be totally honest, as I'm watching this movie, one, it had a almost documentary feel, because you find out that this has all been put together post disaster. And so it actually almost had a documentary type feel to it. So it was a much smoother flow. And I actually kind of enjoyed it, despite the fact that it was, found footage. So
to expand on the storyline a little bit, this found footage film is set in 2009 in the town of Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, where something has infected the water. It's not 100% known what it is or how it is transmitted. But when people start turning up dead and others start to do strange things, fear turns to panic and the town is shut down. The government confiscates all video footage from every source possible. The government didn't want you to see it. This is that footage which is put together by a news reporter who was there.
Yes, very well put.
Very well put. That was written by somebody on IMDb, and I really dig that, actually. Now, I wanted to start off with the... So since it's found footage, let's get the technical stuff out of the way. Usually with found footage movies, like you said, they're annoying. They seem cheap. They're done on the cheap, or they're done to look cheap. And I agree with you completely. This movie did not feel cheap. It didn't feel... And I know it's an independent feature, but it was... Lionsgate did pick it up to distribute it, so it got something. It had some clout behind it. But like the producers did with Paranormal Activity, a lot of the found footage is not shaky cam, it's fixed cam. So it's like security cameras and things like that. And it's so nice to not have to sit and feel like you're in an earthquake the entire movie. And I thought that was very nice in this. Plus, sound sometimes in these kinds of movies can be scary. I thought it was done well.
Oh yeah, because like you said, it was security cams. Although, now that we talk about it a little bit, that town had a lot of damn security cameras for such a small town. But you know, you got those which were steady. The news report was pretty steady, even when they were moving around. You know, like professional cameramen would do. Excuse me. You had the inside cam from the cop car and the outside cam. Yes, there was footage that was a little bit more reminiscent of the other found footage, like Cloverfield or Wreck or any of those kinds of movies where it was taken on a cell phone. So, in fact, there was one whole storyline in this movie where a young girl, I don't think we ever did figure out what happened. She gets on FaceTime on her phone with her friend because her parents are gone. And all of a sudden she's got this rash and she goes to the hospital. And this whole storyline is where she's just talking to the camera on her phone, supposedly talking with her friend over FaceTime. So that's a little shakier than some of the others. But, you know, overall it was done well. Technically, there was, you weren't going, what am I seeing?
Yes. Well, and it wasn't like the out of focus or, hey, we've had to flip on the night vision on the camera so you can hide the fact that your special effects are terrible, you know, from our viewing.
Right.
So, yeah, I agree completely. Technically, I thought it was fine. Absolutely nothing negative to say about the technical. Because this movie wouldn't work, I don't think, as effectively if it wasn't. I think it's actually part it sells it to me. It needed it.
Well, and you know, as far as, you know, other, I guess, technical aspects, the acting, there was nothing that I found unbelievable. As far as the actual acting itself, I do have a couple of problems with this film, and we'll discuss it a little bit later. But everybody came across believable. It's not like I felt pulled out of the movie because I just go, why would you do that? Or, you know, why did you say that? The conversation didn't seem stilted like in a couple of recent movies that we watched, where you just went, oh, that is just bad.
Oh yeah, there was definitely a good script. I had no problems with that. I will say the sheriff wasn't too crazy about the sheriff.
Yeah, he was. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe why I didn't like him.
Right. It was just something about him. I was like, you need to give that man a camera. Because we just don't need to hear him or see him. He had no presence at all.
Oh, speaking of which, we didn't even discuss who was in this film.
Oh, yes. Well, funny thing is, the cast overview on IMDb is not in the order that I would have put it as far as the people.
No, definitely not.
The star of this movie is Heather Donahoe, and to me, I would say that the strongest male role would be Stephen Kunken, who was the doctor in the ER.
Oh yeah, Dr. Abrams. Yeah,
you're right. Heather Donahue is Donna. She is the reporter that was there during the outbreak and during all the quote unquote festivities, and she is the one that comes back and compiles all this digital information that she has been able to find because she was so strongly affected by what happened here and was upset that nobody got to see it.
Right.
And she does a lot of the film opens on her. She does a lot of talking directly to the camera, and then she even does some voiceover stuff during her particular found footage sections. She does some voiceover stuff, basically making fun of herself, which I found that I liked that a lot. That seems so believable because she was right. She had to play a reporter that was not very good at reporting, and she did that well because I sure thought she was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And just the fact that she was able, you know, it was believable that she's like, man, why didn't anybody tell me my pants were that tight?
Right.
Or, you know, just little lines like that where, you know, obviously it's 3 years later, you know, anybody can do that where they look back at, you know, something they did 3 years prior and go, oh man, what was I thinking? You know, And honestly, she is the star of the movie. The rest of the movie is really kind of a,
It's a hodgepodge.
yeah,
It's
because you're focusing. I mean, all of these other people are dead for the most part.
well, it's an anthology.
Yeah, and it's just they're all kind of I can't even think of the word now, but it's a collective cast. There's not any one particular person who's the focus for the rest of the film. It's all Heather Donahue's Donna character, but other people in the movie, most of them I didn't recognize, with the exception of one actress. Her name is Kristen Connolly. She played Stephanie, who she and her husband were on the boat going to Chesapeake Bay to meet their parent.
Oh wow!
She was in Cabin in the Woods.
Yes, she was, and
She
I love
played-
that movie. That is a top 5 horror movie for me. But I did not recognize her at all.
Yeah, she was literally the only other one that I recognized. And like I said, on IMDb, they just kind of threw everybody's name in. There's I don't even know if it's, other than Steven as Dr. Abrams, there's Frank Deal, who plays Mayor Stockman. And he's in the movie quite a bit because you find out actually pretty early on that he was kind of a co-conspirator in what happened.
Yeah, he was in on something happening. She says that like in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So there's no secret there. But yeah, you're right. I recognized him, but I couldn't have told you where from. I had no idea where I'd seen him. And I'm not sure that I still can, to be honest with you. He was in a lot of TV stuff. Lots of one episodes of this TV show, one episode of that TV show. Just lots of things like that.
He's been on Law and Order SVU. I think, it looks like 7 episodes would be about the longest stretch he's ever had. Yeah, lots of one shots. So I'm sure I've seen him, but excuse me.
All right, so this outbreak is in the water. Basically, it's such a wild combination of things coming together to create this effect. And I don't know how deeply we want to go into what's going on about it.
I don't. Well, I mean, if you look at the cover, it kind of shows it basically, without, I guess, well, can't really describe it without getting into it. Basically, this convergence of they've got a chicken farm that dumps 1 million pounds of chicken crap into the water. What I think a year is what they were saying, or plus there was a nuclear leak and all this other stuff. Basically, kick starts a massive growth of these parasites. And instead of being these little tiny things that, in fact, they later on in the film, they talk about them in their normal form. I guess fishermen call them sea lice.
Yes.
They talk about that a little bit in the film. But this convergence of all these other things, this desalination plant, the nuclear waste, the chicken excrement, and all this, basically just kind of kicks the growth thing into high gear, and they become, giant versions of themselves.
Well, and the thing that was, they're not giant in the water.
No.
They're still larvae, but it is their growth rate is what's accelerated. When they get inside a host, they explode very quickly in size. Which I thought, the premise behind the movie is fine. I liked it. In fact, I've already called a friend and said, dude, go find this movie. Go watch it right now. It's right up your alley. He's the conspiracy theorist friend of mine. This has probably already happened in his mind. And so I was like, there you go, man. It's all about you. I'll throw Greg a bone. So he was kind of tipping my hat to my rating or my conversation about that. But yeah, I thought all that convergence is just like a lot of bad luck, but it was all believable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, I'm not a chemist or a scientist like that, so I can believe stuff like that because it's not a radioactive spider that bit somebody. It's a lot of things, and when you screw with the environment, I think honestly the environment's going to eventually start screwing back, in my opinion. I don't know. Now about the movie itself, um, I do have to say there's a scene where the fisherman was holding a fish by its mouth, and they looked in, and all of a sudden the creature jumped out of it and jumped onto his arm. I actually did jump.
Oh, I
There is
did.
a. Did you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I scared both my cats and my wife.
That's awesome because I jumped. I was like, whoa, all right, that's great because you know I don't jump at movies very often, so it has that in it. I do have to say that at one point, and I took note, I was 42 minutes in, and I started to say, okay, I know these people well enough now. I know the little girl doesn't feel good. I know that the reporter is lost because she doesn't understand what's going on. I get it. Let's move on.
Yeah.
And right when I said that, it starts to kick into high gear. And everybody starts, it basically starts coming together and you get to see how it all works out and ends. I really liked the CDC conversation with the doctor. That seemed so real to me.
Well, I like the whole thing with the CDC. I mean, not just with the doctor, but when we see the guy on basically his, webcam, as he's talking to the other CDC people, and especially at the end when he's talking with the guy from, Homeland Security or whatever.
Oh, when they said it took 16 days to find this out?
Yeah. But
Yeah,
even at the beginning when it's, him, the doctor, Dr. Abrams or whatever, talking to the CDC guy, and the CDC guy is like, he's kind of bored and, yeah, whatever, it's probably just nothing. We get this all the time. And then as the movie progresses,
he actually seems to care.
Yeah, he gets more and more involved and realizing that this is something that potentially could, affect more than just this small little town. And, it was all very believable as far as the dialogue, how they reacted. And again, not being a scientist, obviously not working for the CDC, I don't know how that works, but I bought it.
Oh, I did too, completely. I thought that was real. I thought it was believable. I thought it was cool. I thought that was a highlight of the film and it was kind of like watching the journey of that character. None of these characters really got a journey. It was, I guess, a little bit with the reporter, but it basically was backwards with her because we saw her unhappy with the world at the beginning, and now we're finding out why.
Right.
And that was neat, I guess. But I liked the guy. He was like, oh, here we go, another panicking doctor. Tell me what you got. Did you try this antibiotic? Well, of course we tried that. Did it do any good? No, there's no response. What do you mean by no response? The lesions are still spreading. Oh, okay. And every time you have a conversation with him, he's more of a believer.
Right.
And then they have another one, and he's more of a believer again. And I just really liked that because usually when you see those guys in these kinds of movies, it's like he's that bored, I don't care, you're a small town, leave me alone, the whole movie. And that drives me crazy watching movies because not everybody in a small town is an idiot.
Right. Yeah. And that's, again, why I really, like you're saying, I liked it because, he became interested and concerned about what's going on. And you could just, especially in that last conversation that he had with the guy, from Homeland Security or whatever that agency was, you could just feel his contempt.
Oh, yeah, he was mad. It was great. And I love the way he hung up on him. It was excellent. I thought it was excellent.
Excuse me.
Now, I jumped that one time. We talked about jumping that one time. I didn't jump at too much. I don't remember jumping anything else in the movie, but I loved the scene with the reporter where she's out there where they had the crab eat off, and she just stops for a second, and you can hear people off in the distance screaming. That elevated the creep factor to me big time.
Oh, absolutely.
I really like that.
The only
And,
other jump I had was when our girl Stephanie, the girl from Cabin in the Woods, towards the end, she gets in the car,
oh yeah,
the cop car, and thinks she's going to drive off, and of course there's somebody in the back seat.
that is the only problem that I really had with this movie. I got completely out of the movie when that occurred for two reasons. One, no cop car in the United States is made without a cage. They all have a cage. The body in the back seat would not have been able to do anything to the person in the front seat but scare them. There would have been plexiglass, or there would have been a cage, a fence.
Right.
I've never seen, as far as I know, that's the way all cruisers are made. If it's got the lights on top, that's what it's got. Because you never, even the Camaro, the 92 Camaro RSs they had back in the day that barely had a back seat and you had to pull the seat forward to squeeze them in the back seat, it had to have some kind of cage in it too, because you never knew when you had to pick somebody up.
Well, and I think that's a kind of a Hollywood trope, or maybe that's not the right word. Something in Hollywood, you see that all the time, where the cop cars don't have.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. Now, I could be completely wrong. Listeners, if you want to write in and say, in my town, none of them have them, hey, I'm all ears. Let me know, because where I have lived my whole life between Louisiana and Texas, there is not one on the road without it.
Well, not only that, but every episode of Cops, or some of the newer shows, Alaska State Troopers, every one of those episodes I've ever seen, every cop car has a cage.
This is true. This is quite true. But there is a moral to that story. Even if there's a cage, if you're getting into a car in the midst of an apocalyptic disaster, check the back seat, ladies and gentlemen. There's our public service announcement for everybody. I did like the corpse by the fountain that scared the reporter. The eye roll was very effective, because I was sitting there thinking that is not a very believable bit of makeup. I didn't like it. Then they did the eye roll, and I was like, okay, makeup's good. I liked it. They just won me over with that one. And one other real positive scene, which I didn't care for the sheriff, but did you buy those two gunshots when the sheriff stopped to talk to the deputy?
Yeah, I guess I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Oh my God, that looked just like, if you had shown me that with a CNN on the bottom right-hand corner, I'd have believed it. I have not seen a headshot that looked that believable, or a person shot with their back to the camera and it erupt on their back like that when they got shot from the front. That was done well. I was very impressed. Now, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so, okay, having said all these positives, I do have a couple of problems.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if maybe it's because I'm becoming cynical watching all these movies.
Becoming?
My biggest problem is the convenience of the whole, literally of the whole thing. The fact that there was a reporter there on the day that it happened, and it all happened on the 4th of July when all of these people were around. There's never given an explanation as to why these people who were living in this town, they're basically consuming these larvae or whatever, or, bathing or swimming in the water that these things are in on a daily basis. Why all of a sudden it kicks in on that particular day? What confluence of events, cosmic alignment, whatever. And it's just, one of those Hollywood things. And I have to get over that. Because it's like, well, it's, if it had happened almost any other day of the week, you might get some cell phone footage. You might get, the security camera type stuff. But you wouldn't have a reporter on the scene describing it.
Right. Which, yeah, it is convenient. Now that I think about it, I'm thinking about all the other type of movies that have things like this happen. It always happens during a festival or a fair.
Yeah,
like there's a Roger Corman movie that's like that, and in a minute I'll come up with a name. The Fog is kind of like that. They were having that celebration.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's movies do that, and I'll give you that. That I didn't even think about how convenient that was. That didn't enter my head at all.
And see, and what's funny about that is I'm totally buying the fact that the combination of events could create this problem. As far as the chicken excrement and the desalination plant and the radiation and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can believe that this creates a mutated version of this sea lice or whatever. I'm not questioning that. Where I get drawn out, where I get mad is like, oh, it just happened to happen on the 4th of July when there's a reporter there. So
and tons and tons and tons of other people there.
Right. That wouldn't normally have been there necessarily. Like Stephanie and her husband and the baby, we get this kind of heart-wrenching story about them throughout the movie. And the only reason they're there is because it's the 4th of July and she's going to visit her parents, or they're going to visit her parents or whatever. If it had been the 5th of July or the 6th of July or June 4th, we wouldn't have had that.
Well, we wouldn't have had those characters. Yeah. Did not even think about that. That is very true. There are a couple of other things in this movie. They said 3 or 4 times that they were in Maryland. Yeah. And I kept thinking to myself, every time they said something, I was in South Carolina. I don't know why I kept thinking that. But every time they would show something, I've been to the Carolinas. I really like the Carolinas. I've never been to Maryland, so Maryland people don't get offended. I just hadn't been there. But I just thought that felt like South Carolina or North Carolina. And turns out that's where it was filmed.
Oh, well, okay, so there you go.
And most of the cars, they didn't change the license plates, which I didn't notice, but I thought that was a little funny little goof.
Yeah, I saw that goof on the IMDb page.
Humanoids from the Deep, 1980. Roger Corman produced, probably directed it too. It's about humanoids coming up from the deep, but it happened on a small town like this, festival going on. I think it's actually a fair right by the water when they attack in their big numbers. So that's what was coming to mind. I'm impressed that you did not gripe about the fact that FaceTime didn't come out until after this movie was set.
Well, I actually just read that as you said it. I don't know the first thing about, isn't that like an Apple thing? Isn't that like kind of strictly iPhone-ish?
It is.
Okay, I don't have an iPhone. I've never owned an iPhone. Probably never will own an iPhone, so...
Well, I can tell you I have FaceTimed before. It's Skype on your phone.
Well, yeah, I know what it is. I just never... It's not one of those things where I was going, oh, FaceTime, it came out in 2010. I wouldn't have known that. I couldn't tell you when Skype was invented.
Oh, me either.
So, that's not something that I would have caught. But my other big thing about this movie, the problem that I had was that where did the bugs go?
They said at the end what happened to the bugs.
No, I'm talking about like during this whole time we're watching the movie. We don't even see them. Well, there is a scene where the guy, it jumps out of the fish's mouth. But it's really not until about 3/4 or even farther into the film where people are dead and laying on the ground.
Right.
Where they start to emerge from the bodies. Now, and I disliked it and I liked it at the same time, because in any other horror movie that had something like this going on, you would have your survivors trapped by these things. They would come out of the bodies and, we don't know how many are per body. We just know that, they enough to eat their organs and come out. And in fact, Stephanie's husband, in his death, he just showed the rash, and a couple hours later, as he's on the I think it must have been Skype or something similar, they're video chatting with some other guy because his cell phone's coverage has been cut.
Right.
He's standing there, and you could see it just kind of erupting from his throat.
Well, and he was begging her to kill him.
Right. Because he was in so much pain.
Right, which it hit him in a very acute kind of way, didn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I did catch that too. I was like, well, we're at the end of the movie, and they're trying to get through all these pieces.
Right. And so my thing is, like, in like I said, in any other movie, in fact, we watched a movie not too long ago, and I can't remember, I was like The Swarm or something like that, but basically, island town, these bugs come in and they start eating people. And,
yes.
I actually kind of expected that. Because I'm like, okay, the people are dying clearly, because of these
bugs, and they're
bugs.
not right. And you're like, where is once the host dies, why aren't they running out of it?
But they did later on.
Well, I think what I was thinking in that is, and I agree with you, because especially when the mayor is like driving through this obstacle course of dead bodies. I was thinking that the bugs would stay in those bodies and eat those bodies to death. I mean, until there was nothing left, unless something fresh came along.
And I can buy that.
Because they showed the bodies that had been eaten. Some of them were partially eaten, and then they would jump to the next person standing there watching it. And then some of them got eaten a lot. And I don't think it's just because that was the fat kid bug. I think it was because there wasn't anything close for that bug to jump to.
Okay, yeah, I can buy that. But like I said, it was just, I guess I just had that expectation of, the big climax.
You expected all these people to end up together in the same building, helping one another survive the onslaught of bugs at the door.
Yes, because that's what Hollywood has programmed me to believe.
Then it did its job. It didn't do what you expected.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. I liked it, and I disliked it because I expected it, and it didn't happen. But on the same token, I'm like, it's actually more believable because that's probably what the bugs would naturally do is stay in, like what you're saying, stay in the body until its food source was eliminated.
Right, because how many movies would we see where it's like a sheet of them moving down the street?
Right, exactly.
You're right. And you know what? I don't think that nature would do that.
Because
nature would stay in the food source.
Right. And
so,
that's exactly what happened in that other bug movie that I was just talking about. They started not grabbers. It was literally bugs. Like I said, it was a small island. This guy, he was a doctor. He's an alcoholic. He's told to take a vacation because it's starting to affect his work, and he buys his house and he goes to the small island town, kind of New England, Maine-ish area, and there's this bug that has kind of mutated. It's actually, I think, ends up being from like South America or something, or Africa or something like that, and it ends up on this island, and of course it reproduces and it starts eating people and. There is the big climax where they're, not only are they crawly bugs, but they're flying bugs, and they go after the bugs go after the food. So, like I said, that's exactly what I was expecting here. And because it didn't happen, on one hand I was disappointed, but on the other hand, I'm like, oh well, that's new.
That is, I've never heard of that movie.
I'll have to go back and Creepercast people. We reviewed this movie not that long ago, within the last 6 months. I would have to say, I would have to go back and look at it. But if you think of it, get back to us. Let us know what you think. Compare the bug movies.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else?
I just gotta say, and this is like in no this has nothing to do with a review of the movie in any way, shape, or form. But I would probably leave my wife for Heather Donahue. She was, I mean, and she's not like your, I don't know, there's just something about her that I'm like, she is just beautiful. I think she is just smoking hot. And Heather, if you ever listen to this broadcast, my name's Michael. Feel free to give me a call.
And you can find him. No.
I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
The thing I liked about her was that her hairstyle had changed in the 3 years from the time she was reported to the time that she was doing the mash together. And I thought it was a believable change, and it showed the time difference, because her hair was way short when she was the reporter, and it was not that short when she was doing the compilation. And I was impressed with that because they invested time in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. What did they call that? Like a pixie cut or something? I don't know.
Yeah. She was way short pixie cut, which suited her. I thought it worked well. Her pants were tight. But all right, one negative thing I have to say about the movie, other than the police car taking me out and making me mad, in retrospect, the scientists on the boat were useless. The lady from the Cousteau Institute and the guy from the University of Maryland, or the Maryland Institute of Oceanography, I thought that they were useless. They did not come to any groundbreaking things that everybody else did without them. Did they do much for you?
No, and again,
they told them what bug it was. They did tell them what bug it was, and they said, "Here, look at this." And then I found it very interesting. I'm glad I said this because I wanted to point this out. The CDC was sitting there watching YouTube footage of these bugs when they were describing what they're supposed to look like. Why is this sea lice getting so big? And they were watching a YouTube film of something on it. I thought that was awesome. Even the CDC has to go to YouTube to find it. YouTube has everything, man. You can find anything on YouTube. I thought that was pretty neat. I don't know. I just thought they spent too much time on the scientists. They were boring.
They were, and I guess my other thing, yeah, they're scientists, but if they knew that these could be potentially dangerous, why the hell did you get in the water?
Well, I was so mad. He jumps in the water. I said, "Well, that guy's toast." And then I didn't even get the satisfaction of seeing him die.
Yeah, we only saw the one. But I don't. I think part of it for this film, like I said, it ended up feeling almost like you were watching, Dateline or 2020 or something, because they put this together afterwards. This was a kind of a retrospective, so they were able to compile it in such a way. And it was more of like, okay, they showed this footage, and then of course there was the caption on the screen, the black screen, where it's like, this was submitted to Mayor Stockton, or whatever, on such and such a date. There's no indication that he responded. So it was. I think a lot of it was to give you the feeling that they were trying. It was potentially preventable and more than possibly covered up by the mayor, because he was kind of in on it.
Oh yeah, isn't it always that way?
Well, yeah, there's always an inside man.
The other movie that this movie made me remember and think of was The Crazies.
I have not seen that one yet, so.
Oh, well, we might just have to put that on the list, guys. I love The Crazies. A lot of my friends think I'm crazy for liking it. I don't know what it is about it I like. It works. But anyway, we're not talking about that movie. We're talking about The Bay. So, how would you rate The Bay?
This one was a little difficult for me to score, because I went into it with some preconceptions, because it was found footage, and then I found myself liking it, but then I had some other issues. It's definitely not a bad movie, but I don't think it's a fantastic movie. I don't think it's quite a 4, but it's more than a 3. So I honestly, because I would probably watch it again in the right circumstances. But on my own, I don't know if I'd watch it again. So I'm going to have to give it a 3.5 stabs out of 5.
Excellent. And yeah, I have to agree with you. It's not a 4. I'd like it to be a little bit better than a 3, but I guess in keeping with what I use on Real Man and everything, I'm going to give it a 3 because this is a movie that if you rented and watched it, you would not be mad the next day that you spent money on it.
You would not go bother me at my old job going, "Can I have my money back?"
Right, and I get that. That's important because sometimes you do. You just want to look at those guys at the video store and say, "You knew." You knew when I handed you that $4.50 that this was gonna suck, and you laughed at me. But this movie, it's got a lot of good things about it. I enjoyed it, and you're right. I probably would revisit this given the right situation too, because I'm not a huge found footage person either. But I didn't even think about it. It's done well. They knew what they were doing.
It's actually got 2 things that I absolutely hate in movies. It's the found footage and bugs. I flipping hate bug movies. But it was, they didn't spend, an inordinate amount of time on the bugs themselves, or the bug killings like we have come to expect in these types of movies. So, yeah, in the right circumstances, if I got together with a couple friends and somebody had to be like, "Oh yeah, I'll sit down and watch this movie."
Absolutely. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. You can check out the rest of our podcast at www.creepercast.com. My site, www.realmanreviews.weebly.com, where I review anything that I watch and feel like writing a review on, including some things that have been requested. So please check those out. Let us know. Leave us some feedback, good or bad. And anything else you want to say, Captain Creep?
Are you going to go see Godzilla, or should I just kind of give a review on my own here?
Well, I want to go see Godzilla. I'm thinking by Saturday I'm going to be able to have seen it.
Okay, well, I'll just throw this out there then, and maybe we can revisit this at Real Man Reviews. I actually went to go see Godzilla. One, because I had to say this, and I actually said it on Facebook. This is the first time in 35 plus years that I have been attending movies that I have ever gone to see a movie on opening weekend. And that is because my wife is turns out a